Hello, my name is Piers Smith and I'm a solution architect at Unique. Welcome to this tutorial in which I'll give you an example of how you can connect a unique digital human to an IBM Watson assistant using Unique's open source reference application for creating conversation interfaces. This tutorial is part of a series we've created to help customers understand the technical components of building a digital human experience. Before we start, if you haven't already watched the tutorial video that introduced this application, please do go back and watch it, as well as introducing you to the purpose of this application and how it fits into the architecture of a unique digital human. The tutorial shows you where to get the code and to get it ready for use. So with that out of the way, this tutorial assumes you have already cloned the application code and installed the packages, which means you're ready to connect a conversation platform. While the application includes a number of pre-written modules, in this tutorial I'm going to focus just on IBM Watson. I will be doing tutorials for some of the other platforms for which I've already written modules, but the steps for all of them will be largely the same. Each one has a set of associated environment variables which are explained in this README, and all you need to do is add the values that correspond to your environment and you'll be ready to connect. Okay, so here I am in my IDE where I have the code I cloned in the earlier video and all the package dependencies have been installed. And since this application comes with a pre-written module for IBM Watson, as I've already said, all I need to do now to create the interface for my Watson assistant is to set up a few environment variables. The repo has a default environment file which contains all the possible environment variables for convenience. This means there are a lot of variables in here that I don't need to use since I'm just connecting Watson. So I can either rename this file to .env and remove the variables I don't need, or just create a new .env file and only bring over the variables I do need, and that's what I've done here. As well as the variables for the other platforms, there are variables for some of the application's other capabilities that are not covered in this tutorial. This includes things like the SSML capabilities that allow you to configure the middleware to apply some speech synthesis markup tags based on patterns, so you don't have to add them all in the conversation platform. The token service, the unsolicited response API, and SSML behaviors will all be covered in other videos, and these aren't needed to connect to my Watson assistant. You can now see also what I meant by a handful of variables. There's actually only 3 variables that I need, and I'll be done. The values needed here all come from your IBM Cloud account. So after logging in and opening your Watson instance, from the resource list, the first 2 variables are here on the resource page, the API key and the endpoint URL. Now I'm going to be cycling these credentials, so I'm not going to bother blurring the key, but I'm going to start copying these over. So starting with the API key, and then the endpoint URL. The third value we need is the ID for the actual assistant I'm going to be connecting to, and that comes from the settings page for the assistant. And here's the assistant ID here. We're going to copy that and drop it into the environment file. And that's it. So all I've had to do is follow the introduction tutorial, clone the repo, install the packages, and then add 3 values to an environment file. I'm now ready to start this application and verify that it's binding a route for my Watson service and that it's ready for requests. So I'm going to go ahead and start this. So I can see here that it's bound a route for my Watson service and that it's listening on port 5000. So I'm ready to test, and for that I'm going to use Postman. So from the first video, you'll recall that this application is implementing a request response contract which is following Unique's specification. And when a conversation starts or an end user says something to a digital human, the Unique platform is going to send a request to my interface. Now that means I can test my application by sending a request in the correct specification, so I can see how my application is going to respond when it's connected to my digital human and Unique starts sending requests. So I'm going to go ahead and set up to do a new post and put in my local address. And now I'm going to drop in a request body that matches the request specification for Unique, and click send. And there we go. So I have a response from my Watson assistant, and it's returning this nice bit of welcome dialogue that I've written. And this is in a response payload that complies with Unique's Unique specification. So this application is now ready for me to connect to a digital human. For that, I'm going to need to deploy it so that the interface can be reached from Unique. So that's the next step. I'll be posting more tutorials in this series that will show you some options for how to do this. So that's it. Thank you for watching. If you have further questions, please contact us by visiting digitalhumans.com.